Did life and the universe originate as a result of the combined actions of chance and natural laws? Or did life and the universe originate as the result of design?
Big Bang cosmology states that the universe began as a microscopic singularity of unimaginable energy that exploded, creating time, space, and matter. Over time, the matter coalesced in space, forming the stars, which created the raw materials of planets and life itself.
The Big Bang sounds like a very neat account of how the universe came to be. But does it really explain the origin of the universe, our Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, the Earth, and life? Or was God involved from the very beginning? The universe, by any standard, is very large. Yet here is a tiny man on a rather small planet orbiting a fairly normal-appearing star, one of about 100,000 million stars in our Milky Way galaxy. And there may be as many galaxies in the universe as there are stars in the Milky Way. In the face of so much, tiny humans on this small planet have constructed instruments that allow them to see closer and closer to the edge of the universe.
Over the course of history, many grand pronouncements have been made about the nature of the universe. For example, when describing the materialistic teachings of Epicurus, Cicero declared,
"For Epicurus, who taught us all the rest, has also taught us that the world was made by nature, without needing an artificer to construct it, and that the act of creation, which according to you cannot be performed without divine skill, is so easy that nature will create, is creating, and has created worlds without number. You, on the contrary, cannot see how nature can achieve all this without the aid of some intelligence."
Cosmology is a branch of knowledge that deals with the origin and nature of the universe. Cosmologists' theories tend to be driven by what they already believe is true. Epicurean philosophers believed the universe was eternal and infinite, so there was no need to explain its origins. Lucretius, an Epicurean poet, argued this way:
"Therefore the nature of space and extent of the deep is so great that neither bright lightnings can traverse it in their course, though they glide onwards through endless tracts of time, nor can they, by all their traveling, make their journey any the less to go. So widely spreads the great store of space in the universe all around, without limit in every direction."
Given the Epicurean belief that there is endless space and eternity to work with, there was plenty of time.
Christians also have a specific set of beliefs based on the biblical account of the creation.
"In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth."
How do we know that the heavens being referred to here are the rest of the universe and not just the solar system or atmosphere? The Bible uses the Hebrew word shamayim, translated here as heavens, in any number of ambiguous ways. It can mean just about anything from the firmament to the sky to the abode of God.
The Bible is not ambiguous about the fact that God made everything, not just the earth and its immediate surroundings in space. This is a theme that pervades Scripture. Even in Genesis 1, the stars are specifically mentioned as being created by God.
God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars.
So according to the biblical account, the universe, and particularly planet Earth, is not eternal. They were created by an intentional act of God.
Yes, Earth and the rest of the universe are products of God's action. God creates matter, God sustains its existence, God arranges matter into inanimate objects, like stars and planets, and ultimately arranges matter to form living things. In the case of humans, God interacted directly with the matter, the dust, from which humans are made.
And in a twist that's certain to keep everybody confused about exactly how old the Earth is, the Bible presents the finished creation as already mature. Adam wasn't created as a fertilized egg that developed into a baby. The Garden of Eden didn't start with barren rocks and evolve into a garden. Even the universe is described as having a sun, a moon, planets and stars, all operating pretty much the way they do today. By the end of creation week, nature already looked fully formed, and much more than 6 days old.
However old it looks, the Bible does make clear that the universe did have a starting point. As King David put it,
"By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, their starry host by the breath of his mouth."
Belief in an eternal universe was popular for hundreds of years and integral to the thinking of many philosophers who denied the creation.
not until the 20th century did this belief ultimately collapse under the evidence compiled in 1929 by Edwin Hubble and Milton Humason. The evidence they noticed, the evidence that killed the steady-state theory, seemed innocent enough at first. They noticed a proportional relationship between an object's distance from the Earth and its redshift.
The redshift is commonly compared to the Doppler effect. The Doppler effect is what causes a train whistle or fire engine siren to shift from a higher pitch as it approaches to a lower pitch as it moves away. This effect is caused because sound waves are compressed as the sound source travels towards you and stretched as it travels away from you.
Although the Doppler effect is a good comparison, the redshift results from a different cause. As light waves travel through space, they stretch out as the universe expands. As the light waves stretch into longer wavelengths, they shift red because red light has longer wavelengths than the other colors of visible light. The older a star or galaxy is, the more their light is stretched by the expanding universe, and the more red their light looks. Conversely, the more red the light is, the older the star or galaxy that originates the light.
The redshift shows that the universe is not just expanding, it's expanding faster and faster. And that discovery ultimately helped support Albert Einstein's theory of general relativity.
The startling implication of an expanding universe is that its expansion can be traced back to an infinitesimally small point containing the entire universe. The term Big Bang started out as a dismissive description of the rapid expansion of this singularity to form the universe, but it has become the accepted name for the theory.
The idea that the universe began as a Big Bang, a singularity, an unrepeated event that took place in the far distant past, ruffled a few feathers. Many cosmologists who had assumed a static, eternal universe for philosophical reasons found the idea of a universe with a beginning very disturbing.
The philosophical problem presented by the Big Bang theory is this: if the universe has a beginning, then logically it must have a cause. That's not a problem for creationists, of course. But it presents a huge problem for those who say that the universe is solely the result of chance and natural law.
Those wrestling with the problem of origins found themselves presented with a choice. Is the Big Bang the uncaused cause of all that we see in the universe today, including life itself? Or is God the intelligent cause of all that we see?
Invoking God as the intelligent cause raises the question of what caused him to come into existence. The Christian God does not require a material cause for the same reason that an eternal universe was thought not to require a cause. God transcends time, space, matter, and all of nature. Given that God is eternal and is not restricted to the laws he created to sustain the physical universe, he does not require a cause.
So ultimately, if the universe is not eternal, there has to be an uncaused cause for the universe, either the Big Bang or something like the Christian Creator God. The advantage of the Creator God in explaining all of nature is that nature gives the appearance of having been designed for a purpose, and this is what intelligent causes, like God, are known to do. Unintelligent causes, like the Big Bang, don't design things for a purpose.
The requirement that the universe has an uncaused cause is a major area that Big Bang cosmology and the biblical view hold in common. Whether that cause was God or the Big Bang itself is the question materialists and theists disagree on.
Like most scientific theories, the Big Bang has its detractors among scientists and others. There are some real issues that are being struggled with. These issues may be addressed or may ultimately lead to the collapse of this theory and its replacement by a new theory.
Since Big Bang cosmology rose to prominence, no alternative theories have gained wide acceptance. The most vigorous opposition to the Big Bang has not come from science, but from those who are uncomfortable with it for philosophical or theological reasons. Big Bang cosmology was initially strongly resisted because of its profound religious implications. Instead of an eternal universe, cosmologists had to deal with a beginning, with all that beginnings imply. As the British astronomer and science writer John Gribben put it,
The biggest problem with the Big Bang theory of the origin of the universe is philosophical, perhaps even theological. What was there before the Bang? The best way around this initial difficulty is provided by a model in which the universe expands from a singularity, collapses back again, and repeats the cycle indefinitely.
On the other side, some religious people have seen the Big Bang as incompatible with their theology and responded with their own challenges to it.
those with a Bible-based understanding of Earth history have two major objections to Big Bang cosmology. First, Big Bang cosmology does not acknowledge God as the cause of all that exists.
The second objection is rooted in the time periods involved. By extrapolating back from current measured rates of expansion, the Big Bang, and thus the origin of the universe, occurred 12 to 16 billion years ago.
If the Big Bang is seen as God's way of creating the universe, the first objection disappears. But attributing the creation of all things to a purely material cause and calling it the Big Bang is clearly incompatible with biblical claims.
Of course, you could say that the Big Bang is simply the mechanism God used to create the universe.
There are those in the Judeo-Christian tradition who say exactly that. Those who hold this view often limit God's direct involvement to the time before the Big Bang, the Big Bang itself, and up to 10 to the minus 72nd seconds after it began. That extremely tiny fraction of a second is the theoretical endpoint before which it's impossible to develop any knowledge, either empirical or theoretical, of exactly what occurred.
In other words, this idea is a lot like a God of the gaps theory.
Yes, a God of the gaps argument basically says that things we don't understand must be miracles performed by God. The problem is that as we understand more of how nature works, the smaller the gaps into which God fits become. Generally, arguments related to design in nature are the opposite of God of the gaps arguments because they are based on what we know about how nature works and what is required to create intelligent designs rather than what we don't know about how nature works.
In any case, God working in undetectable ways is not how the Bible describes God's act of creation. The Bible encourages examination of the creation to see God's greatness and appreciate His power. Scripture helps us see God's action in history and nature. It does not say that His actions are unknowable. Instead, it encourages study of God's creation to learn about Him.
When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place. What is man that you are mindful of him? The Son of Man that you care for him.
There are those who have tried to reconcile the billions of years invoked in Big Bang cosmology and Darwinian evolution by using aspects of relativity theory, especially time dilation, to make the days of creation longer than 6 literal days. Time dilation, for example, changes perceptions of time based on one's point of view. 6 days might pass from the perspective of a being traveling at near the speed of light, while at the same time on Earth, 6 eons elapse.
This idea is one version of the day-age theory, which essentially states that the days described in Genesis 1 and 2, Exodus 20:11, Exodus 31:17, and Hebrews 4:4 are actually eons of time and not literal historic days.
From the perspective of salvation, eons of time for the universe is less of a problem than eons of time for life. If life is ancient, and we see lots of dead creatures preserved as fossils, it seems to make death part of the universe before sin entered the world. If death occurred before sin, death is no longer a consequence of sin. Why forgiveness from sins would save sinners from death is not clear. The death of Christ for the sins of men becomes incoherent.
In addition to theological concerns, there are some scientific reasons to question whether the Big Bang could be the ultimate cause of everything. As Big Bang cosmology has developed, cosmologists have noted that fundamental forces in the universe appear to be very delicately balanced to make our universe hospitable to life.
Gravity is one example that illustrates the fine-tuning of fundamental forces in the universe. Gravity seems to have a very specific value. If the Big Bang is what caused the universe to expand from an infinitesimally small point to the massive size we observe today, then the bang had to be exactly the right size in relationship to gravity.
If the Big Bang had been slightly less powerful, the Big Bang would have quickly turned into the Big Crunch as the universe collapsed back in on itself.
If the Big Bang had been a little bigger, particles of matter would have spread apart so quickly they would never have coalesced into stars, planets, and galaxies.
The universe appears to be expanding at something very close to a uniform rate without rapid acceleration. The Big Bang explosion was at precisely the right level of power to cause this steady-state expansion, a condition essential for life.
The precise energy necessary for this constant expansion of the universe without either deceleration or runaway inflation is called the critical energy.
Just how closely does the energy of the Big Bang match this critical energy?
Very closely. The details of the equations that explain this are complex. But if you take the difference between the critical energy necessary for the Big Bang to produce our smoothly inflating universe and the actual energy density of matter, then divide it by the critical energy, the answer is almost incomprehensibly minuscule, 10 to the minus 60th power. That is 1 over 10 with 60 zeros following it. To mentally visualize how tiny this difference is requires frames of reference that are beyond human comprehension.
The math is complex, but let's try to visualize the answer anyway. There are approximately 10 to the 50th power atoms in the Earth. If you have 10 billion Earths, one atom out of every 10 billion Earths would represent 10 to the negative 60th power. However you attempt to grasp this number, the coincidence between the energy necessary for a stable, expanding universe and the amount of energy in the Big Bang is remarkable.
The relationship between gravity and the force of the Big Bang is just one of several remarkable relationships that have to be true in order for the universe to support life.
In Big Bang cosmology, the materials from which the Earth is made were produced in the massive fusion reactors that we call stars. Several factors are involved in creating conditions for this kind of nuclear fusion to occur. Gravity is one. Other factors include the strong nuclear force and the weak nuclear force.
The strong nuclear force prevents nuclei in atoms from falling apart. The weak nuclear force is related to the electrostatic force, which most people are already familiar with. These forces each play an important role in creating atoms with nuclei larger than the single proton found in hydrogen.
To originate elements essential to life in nuclear reactions inside the stars, something that red giant stars are certainly capable of doing today, the conditions also have to be remarkable. For example, let's take a look at the sequence of events that produce carbon and oxygen, two of the most obviously essential elements for life. This particular sequence starts with helium, which has 2 protons and 2 neutrons in its nucleus. Gravity holds helium within red giant stars under incredible temperatures and pressures. When helium atoms smash into each other under intense heat and pressure, they can do so with just the right amount of energy for the two atoms to fuse.
When they fuse, they form beryllium-8, an unstable isotope that exists only about 1/10 billionth of a second. If another helium atom collides with beryllium-8 during that tiny fraction of time, a stable carbon-12 molecule is formed. If the process continues, another helium nucleus collides with carbon-12 to produce oxygen-16.
Which raises an interesting question. Why doesn't all the carbon-12 get converted into oxygen-16? And why doesn't oxygen-16 go on to collide with another helium atom to form neon-20? What prevents the nuclear fusion reaction that is so necessary to fill the universe with carbon and oxygen from simply continuing forever?
The answer lies in yet more fundamental constants that require yet more remarkable fine-tuning. These additional fundamental constants include the already mentioned strong and electroweak forces, as well as other factors like nuclear resonance. Considering the tremendous unlikelihood of even one of the factors involved, let alone all of them, it becomes clear that even if the universe existed for a long time and provided the source material for the creation, including the carbon, oxygen, and other atoms needed to form living things, there is still a very strong argument that the universe itself is designed.
So according to Big Bang cosmology, the universe we live in exists because a series of incredibly improbable circumstances combine for a specific purpose. That suggests the guiding hand of an intelligence. Stephen Hawking put it this way:
Two sets of very precise numbers seem to suggest either incredible luck or an intelligent cause. The first set deals with constants like the strength of gravity or the force that holds atoms together that have to be just right if the universe is going to be capable of maintaining conditions where life could exist. The second set of constants have to do with production of elements and other factors that would be necessary to get from an initial Big Bang creation to the kind of universe that has elements like carbon in sufficient quantities for life to exist. In both sets of constants, some of which overlap, it seems that extreme precision is required.
So, what does all this mean? For those who are repulsed by the idea of a God who actively interacts with the creation, a God who may intervene in the course of history, and who possibly even interacts with individuals, alternative explanations must be found. When Big Bang cosmology was being proposed, Arthur Eddington, whose observations about the second law of thermodynamics supported Big Bang cosmology, was deeply disturbed about the implications.
Philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order of nature is repugnant to me. I am simply stating the dilemma to which our present fundamental conception of physical law leads us. I see no way around it, but whether future developments of science will find an escape, I cannot predict. The dilemma is this. Surveying our surroundings, we find them to be far from a fortuitous concourse of atoms. The picture of the world, as drawn in existing physical theories, shows arrangements of the individual elements for which the odds are multillions to 1 against an origin by chance. Some people would like to call this non-random feature of the world purpose or design.
Eddington wrote these words before he understood the fine-tuning that is evident today. This emphasizes that even without trying to account for the remarkable fine-tuning of the universe, two things require explanation: the origin of the universe and its improbable suitability for life.
Some have resorted to chance to explain the suitability of the cosmos for life. One way of doing this is to appeal to multiple universes, either contemporary with our own, or over time as the current universe expands and collapses in repeated cycles, each one randomly changing the fundamental forces until, over the course of eternity, the universe occupied by living things becomes inevitable.
This multiverse idea goes beyond empirical science because other universes, if they exist, are independent from our own and cannot be studied in any way using empirical data. Appealing to zillions of unobserved universes is essentially an appeal to the unknown and the unknowable. In addition, the multiverse theory ultimately fails to address the question of the origin of the universe or the multiple universes it invokes. In fact, this speculation makes the problem of the origin of things even more profound, as it requires an explanation not just for one universe, but for many.
Another way of dealing with the fact that the universe appears to be just right for the existence of living things involves the weak anthropic principle. In essence, this principle states that the remarkable life-sustaining coincidences evident in the universe are in fact not surprising. After all, the fact that we are here to observe them tells us that they must exist.
This argument has been examined and found wanting. Possibly the most entertaining rebuttal involves an analogy devised by John Leslie. He examined the reaction of a man who just survived a firing squad. On the one hand, the intended victim of the execution should not be surprised that, if he is still alive, he can observe that the entire firing squad missed him. But on the other hand, it would still be reasonable for him to be surprised that they were all such lousy shots.
In other words, the weak anthropic principle fails not because we exist and can observe the remarkable coincidences that allow our existence, but because the fact that the universe is so exactly balanced to allow our existence is, given the essentially limitless alternatives, genuinely unexpected.
As we've seen, Big Bang cosmology incorporates one great consistency with the biblical view of creation. It shows that the history of the universe is not infinite, and that it thus requires an explanation, a cause. It is in the details of time and process that tension may become evident between this scientific model and scripture-based theology of creation.
For some, it is enough to have the general agreement between the Bible, providing God as the cause for the universe, and Big Bang cosmology, showing that a cause is necessary.
For those who take a more literal interpretation of the Bible, evidence of the Big Bang in the ancient past may be analogous to rings on the tree of life. When God created the tree, its mature size implied a history of development.
Even if he had created a seed, it would still imply a history that involved an adult plant with seed-producing flowers.
Assuming the tree of life had rings, what would an examination of the rings reveal about the history of the tree? Just having annual rings would suggest that the tree was of a certain age in years, which, if it was created on the third day, it was not. Some might argue that God was misleading Adam if there were rings in the tree of life. But how else would God create a mature tree?
Along a similar line of reasoning, if God created the universe, and universes have an implicit history for their natural development, how could the difference be determined between a universe created in the recent past in a state ready for life, and a universe created in the ancient past that had matured to the point that life could exist in it?
If science is about studying natural phenomena that are repeatable and can be studied by doing experiments, then a singularity, an event that just happened once, is not well studied by science. This makes both the Big Bang singularity and the creation singularity difficult to address using conventional scientific approaches.
However, science may give some insights into how an event occurred. If the universe is not eternal and it came into existence, reason and observation tell us it was caused by something.
Christians have a ready explanation in the Bible of what the cause of the universe was: the Creator God, who is eternal and transcends nature.
Over the more than 2 millennia since they were made, confident proclamations by Greek and Roman Epicurean philosophers about the nature of the cosmos and the irrelevance of the gods have not been supported by man's investigation of the universe.
The more the universe is understood, irrespective of Big Bang cosmology, the more elegant and suggestive of design it appears.
Ultimately, whether it was created 6,000 years ago or 13.7 billion years ago, the fact that the universe has an apparent age based on at least some observations is not surprising.
Equally unsurprising is the apparent hand of God in setting the basic physical constants that impress cosmologists, so that ultimately The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork.